Cool. How's it going, everybody? Welcome to the second episode of season 2 of Lawrence Harvey's Cyber Sit Down podcast. Every month, I, alongside my colleagues, will be speaking to leaders within the cybersecurity industry across different topics, ranging from scaling a security function, how to position yourself within the job market, and then current events and trends that we're seeing within the industry right now. I'm Jason, hosting today's conversation, and I focus on security placements and client partnerships across the U.S. This episode, we are joined by Doug Hromco, the CISO of People's Bank, and we're going to touch on quite a few different topics. We're going to talk about strategic spending of a cybersecurity budget, how to best build a security function with value for dollar, and as always, we'll take a bird's eye view of the market. So with that, I would like to turn it over to Doug, as I think our listeners and the people that are tuning in would like to know how you kind of got started in security and then moved up through the ranks to now be the CISO over at People's Bank.
Yeah, Jason, thanks. And thanks for having me.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I think, just my career journey is probably similar to a few other folks in CISO roles across different organizations. I started my career at a large insurance organization working primarily in the IT infrastructure group.
Yep.
I had the opportunity to do a lot of things like networking and server deployments and all that fun stuff, and kind of worked my way through different jobs about every 2 years, ultimately leading to a point where I had the opportunity to join the information security or cybersecurity team at that organization, leading the business continuity and disaster recovery function. And so that was kind of my intro into information security and cybersecurity a couple, probably more years ago than I want to admit, but really gave me kind of the background of, how resiliency is done at large organizations and why it's important.
Awesome.
And then continued in that role and took on some additional accountabilities while I was there around the strategy of how we were going to deploy our information security technologies and tools, which was a lot of fun. And then kind of had the opportunity to take on some identity and access management work as well.
Nice.
And so did those types of things, and through a couple of different job changes, ultimately ended up being promoted or hired into the CISO role at People's Bank. So really just tried to get a broad and varied background in information security and cybersecurity, and kind of leverage those skills and capabilities to kind of move my way into different positions.
Amazing. Makes a ton of sense to me. And yeah, it seems as though what you did really nicely was kind of cover the gamut of security from that technical perspective while you were still a bit more hands-on in the tools, and then you progressed within kind of bringing it all together and moving into that leadership role. Certainly that aligns with what we see out there, but hey, everybody has different paths into it, right? So it's always interesting to kind of understand how it goes for individuals. Okay, this is great. As I had mentioned, Doug, one thing that I thought could be really good for us to speak about in this episode would just be like a security budget, spending of security dollars. That's going to mean different things to different people, and it could be really good for us to dig into that. I mean, lots of things kind of come into play when you're talking about a security budget. You have personnel, tooling, training, and so much more. Oh, don't tell me we were just freezing. We're back?
You there?
I'm here.
I think we're back. Hopefully
Cool.
You can edit this.
Yeah. That should be fine one way or the other.
Yeah. If you want to ask your question again, sorry.
No worries. But basically what I was saying is this episode, we're going to be speaking about security budgets. There's a lot that goes into that, whether that's, personnel and headcount, security tooling, training, and so much more. I'd like to know I'd like to get a bird's eye view of your approach to a security budget, and kind of how you feel you should analyze it, and then maybe work down from there.
Yeah. Good question. I think everybody wishes they always had more money, regardless of what their role is, and especially when they're in a leadership role, right? Everybody wants the opportunity to kind of deliver and deploy the things that they might feel are most important to support their business. But
Yep.
the way, I kind of look at the security budget is we could have an unlimited amount of money and risks are still going to exist. And so we really try and take a risk-based approach to the security investments that we're making by understanding what it is our business partners are delivering in that particular, we'll call it budget cycle, or
Yep.
maybe have delivered in the previous budget cycle, and looking at maybe if we have gaps in the security associated with those business projects, and then also looking at just known risks or issues that we might have within the organization and how we might be able to close those gaps with some different technology investments. We also take a hard look at the processes that we're using to perform cybersecurity or some of the other functions within the organization,
Okay.
and see if there's an opportunity to kind of automate those things through investments in either
Gotcha.
people, new processes, or some technology or combination of the three.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of how I take a look at it, and try and take a look at it with my team and my leadership group.
Perfect. All of that makes sense to me and would align with my expectations. One point I wanted to circle back on, you mentioned that automation piece.
Mhm.
And whenever I speak to senior leaders, it's something that comes up. And in 2022, when I went to RSA, right, I wrote a little post about like my key takeaways from RSA, and I think I heard the word automation 500 billion times, right? Um, it's a buzzword in the industry and it can mean lots of different things within security, but I guess for you, you know, what are some good examples of things that could be automated and maybe um might then
Yeah,
help make spending more effective?
sure. Um, yeah, I agree. Automation is kind of a buzzword in
Big time.
a lot of areas, right? Or uh, machine learning or AI, whatever you want to call it. It's all really part of the same bundling of things.
Yep.
But yeah, what I try and look at, what we try and look at is where do we have, overly burdensome manual processes that really either drive expense or inefficiency in the organization, and then look to see if there's a way, maybe first and foremost, just to make that process more efficient. And sometimes that's going to lead to introducing new technologies to do that. Other times it's just taking a hard look at the process and removing steps that don't add value. And so, that's what we try and do. And then, if you can put a technology in place, there's
Yep.
generally a level of automation that again just makes that process more efficient. It
Yep.
doesn't fully automate almost ever. And so you again are still going to have the people involved to really take the output of that system or the automation that's taken place, to assess it and evaluate it and make some decisions around it.
Yeah, for sure. Still will need that personnel to help, I guess, to help with
Yeah,
the automation. Like I think a lot of people get quite fearful. There, I've chatted to some engineers that have said, "Hey, like, is automation
yeah,
gonna kick me out of a job?" No, not necessarily at all. It's more so how are you going to help automate these processes. So yep,
yeah.
absolutely, that makes sense to me. And like, I guess on the topic of spending money on this tooling, right? Like for a bank specifically in the threat landscape that pertains to a bank, is there a specific area of cybersecurity tooling that you're more inclined to spend on or look into as a CISO at a bank compared to, let's say, if you were in another industry, whether it was tech, healthcare, you know, whatever else that
Um,
could be?
yeah. I'd like to say yes, but I think all the problems are the same, in a
Gotcha.
lot of ways across industries. The an area that I think most organizations try and invest in is, in identity and access management. It continues to be a challenge,
Yep.
and each industry has a unique challenge associated with it. Financial services, it's just, understanding and managing the risk of access across the organization. And then you look
Of
at an
course.
organization like health or a healthcare organization, and they have multiple types of employees kind of in and out of their different facilities that may or may not work for the hospital, and so they have kind of a different challenge
Right.
around how to manage that. And so that's an area I think a lot of people put a lot of time and energy into. But really, all the cybersecurity domains are important, and it's just kind of the level of risk that you might feel you have in one particular one over another. So, financial services were heavily regulated. And
Yep.
so doing things like identity and access management is critical from a regulatory and compliance perspective, where maybe it's not so important in a less regulated industry, where maybe data protection is more important because of IP that the organization has, or other types of things like that. So it's always kind of a balancing act against the risks that you're trying to mitigate against, and the threats that you see out there. Kind of back
100%.
to the first point, I think everybody would love to have an unlimited budget and kind of lock every domain down, but a lot of times it's just not feasible. And so you gotta kind of tighten things up where you can, and continuously improve as best you can.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's really well put. As you said, everybody probably wishes that they had it unlimited, but you work with what you have and make the most of it. I already had mentioned, when I opened up the episode, like I mentioned spending money on tooling, on people, on training, maybe even conferences, but like, what are some other things that could tie into a security budget? Maybe some of the lesser known things that we would expect, but that are part of a budget.
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, you kind of hit on the big ones.
Cool.
People and technology are kind of the big parts of most budgets, training as well.
Yep.
Trying to think, maybe some of the depending on the organization, also just some of the outside support. So maybe whether it's like bringing in a consultancy, or bringing in a group, or essentially licensing with a group who has some insight around some of the new and evolving technologies, or can provide an outside perspective to the organization. That's always, I think, a good level of investment.
Of
Um,
course.
and then depending on the size of your organization, just travel, because I know
Yeah.
we live in a remote world, but getting in front of and talking to the people, both within the business and kind of out in the field, is
Yeah.
important from a security perspective, because then you understand what they're facing, and can kind of build solutions that really help them, versus be really focused on the security aspects of it all.
Of course, yeah. No, that makes sense to me, and I think that travel piece, that face-to-face interaction, that's super important. Like the shift that we saw in the market, obviously COVID hit, everybody went remote, and nobody was working in office. But I'd say maybe over the last 6, 12, 18 months, there has been that shift to hybrid capacity, or some type of travel. And yeah, I agree with you. Like if you're looking to be influential to your team, whether that's your peers, the people that report into you, the people you report into, the board, nothing beats that face-to-face interaction at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So yeah, depending on the size of an organization, that will definitely be a relevant topic.
Yeah. And a lot of
Cool.
people in cybersecurity are, we'll call it recovering IT people. So they're kind of inherently introverted, and working from home, it was kind of easy to shift
Yeah.
from when you're in cybersecurity or information security, or work from home, because a lot of the tools and capabilities were already digitized in some way, for you to do your work outside of the office. But again, yeah, you kind of lose that connection with the rest of the business. And so whether you are remote or in the office, you got to just figure out ways to maintain that.
Exactly.
Because again, we're at the end of the day, we're here to help the business be successful and safe. So we got to keep that in mind, and talk with those folks and work with them.
Absolutely. Yeah, this all sounds great. And the only other thing that I wanted to kind of circle back to on, from what you said, we mentioned a little bit on like security training, maybe some certs. Obviously there's a billion and one certifications out there, for every part of cybersecurity in general, right? Um,
Mhm.
are there any certs for you specifically that tend to stand out, or that you see as, solving a particular challenge, or yeah, any certs to make note of?
Um, I'm probably the wrong person to ask that question. So I've not put a whole lot of stock in certifications. Now I think they serve a purpose. They provide good insight and education to folks. But applying what you've learned in those is
Yeah,
probably as important as getting the certification. So I kind of look at it as the certification teaches you the language, but then doing the work really helps ingrain it in you in terms of
of
what you
course.
need to do. So
Yeah,
again,
fair.
just depending on the role, certain things might be more important than others, but I wouldn't say that for me, at least one stands out more than some of the other things.
Totally fair. And it's the age-old debate. We see it on LinkedIn all the time. There's some people that absolutely love certs.
Yeah.
I sometimes come across resumes and the last page is just a list of them. Other people don't have them. Some people it's somewhere in between. But I do agree with your point. Like that practical, hands-on, real-world experience, that nothing beats that, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And again, I think certifications serve their purpose and can be important, but I don't believe it to be the be all end all. I don't know that it um, is equal to
Yeah.
practical experience. And arguably the same can be true with college degrees. I know there's again kind of that age old debate in the information
Yeah.
and cybersecurity spaces around do you need to hire somebody with a college degree? I mean, I would again argue that somebody with the right experience is going to be more equally or more successful than somebody with a college degree. It doesn't mean don't go to college. It's just
Yep.
some of that experience we need to make sure that we leverage as we in the cybersecurity space continue to hire and grow as an industry really.
Yeah, 100%. I I mean, personally, from just looking at the people that I've placed coming from such diverse backgrounds, like not
Mhm.
everybody's in a position where they can go to college right out of
Right.
high school, right? Some people need to jump into the workforce for various reasons, and if you jump in early and you show that you have the right ability to be coached and
Mhm.
learn, there's something to be said for
Yeah.
that. So, yeah, I agree. It's more than just certifications. And yeah, I think that there's that a college degree is also a good example of
Yeah.
something like that.
And I think you
Um,
hit on the right point. It's like demonstrating the ability to learn. Might be jumping ahead a little bit, but
no,
I think that's key to anybody who is successful is being willing to learn and again demonstrating the desire to learn new things. So
of
uh,
course.
that's important.
Cool. No, I that's that. Yeah, I'd argue to say that that could be the most important thing. I saw something on LinkedIn recently, and I don't remember the exact wording, but it's like there's not one person in the security industry that knows everything about it, right? The threat landscape's continuing to
Yep.
change, so somebody that's humble enough to acknowledge that and wants to kind of stay tuned with how things are changing, that's crucial.
Yeah. You might
So
meet some people who think they know everything, but yeah, nobody does. There's too much going on.
way too much. But okay, so like if certs and college degrees, they're certainly not the be all end all. What are some of the things that, from a resume perspective, when you're reviewing candidates that you look for that will stand out to you? Um, I'm purposely asking that as a quite a broad question. It could be the format of a resume, the way they communicate. Is there anything that kind of stands out?
Um, yeah, I mean, I think again, it for me, it's the people who have demonstrated the ability to kind of grow and learn and continue to develop in their careers, whether they're moving into the cybersecurity organization for the first time. Sorry, my
Yep.
dog's in the background here.
No
Uh,
worries. We're a dog-friendly podcast.
Perfect. Um, so whether it's they're moving into cybersecurity from some other industry or whatever they were doing, that they took on the challenge to build a base level of understanding and knowledge and have a desire to continue to learn and grow.
Yep.
Um, those are some of the things that I look for when reviewing resumes, depending on the role. And then if it's a more senior position, obviously, experience is key as
Yep.
well. Whether it's within a particular industry or within a particular cybersecurity domain or um, leadership experience as well. So a lot of it just depends on the role, but for again entry level positions, I think it's being a person who's shown the willingness to learn and grow and develop, and again for more senior positions, showing that you can lead people,
Yeah.
and help people develop, learn and grow, and again maybe have some more specific technical experience.
Yeah, absolutely. Specifically on that leadership piece, like obviously you want to see people like if you're hiring somebody into a leadership role, you want to make sure that they've successfully led people in the past. But I think that one of the misconceptions that we sometimes see in the industry, um, it could be a little controversial, but like you can be a very successful leader
Yes.
if you haven't had direct reports on the line prior, right? Like you got to start somewhere. And the reason that this is so fresh and on my mind is there's somebody that I spoke to for the past 5 years. They have been a lead engineer. You know, they have not had direct reports. This person, in terms of like an HR dotted line, has never been a people manager. That being said, the ability that they have displayed to me in, you know, the screening call that I had with them and everything that they were sharing with me about the ways that they were mentoring the junior engineers and the analysts and showing them new ways to find vulnerabilities in these cloud environments and the full 9 yards and kind of the way that they were helping them culturally within the organization too. There was no doubt in my mind that they would be able to jump into a role as a security manager with direct headcount. But sometimes an issue that we might see in the industry is that people, you know, have a hard time bringing somebody on, right? Unless they've seen those direct reports in the past. Is that a dynamic that you've ever seen in the industry? Is that something that you can speak to? Have you ever come across
Yeah.
that in people that you've hired?
Yeah, I mean, I've experienced it personally as well. I think getting that first direct people leadership role can be one of the most challenging things,
Yeah,
regardless of in cybersecurity or information security. Um, uh, because again, it's a risk for the person hiring you into
yep,
that position if you don't have kind of that direct people leadership experience. It's a different ball game than being an individual contributor, even if you are in those team lead type of roles. And so I think, to your point, the more you can demonstrate that those abilities that you're going to need as a people leader, while maybe not formally being one, the more likely it is somebody's going to take that risk, if you will, on you to give you that first time opportunity.
yeah,
Um, but again, I think that's probably the most challenging jump in a career, is to move from an individual contributor to a people leader. And then once you get there, all of your preconceptions and notions and all that kind of fun stuff go out the window, and you realize, oh man, is this really what I wanted to do? 'Cause there's a lot of, again, just unique challenges that
yeah,
as an individual contributor you don't have to deal with.
yeah,
And
totally.
maybe not dealing with, but trying to make that team successful, make it operate as a team,
Yep,
get people to work together. Those are all skills that are necessary to be successful there. And then as again, your teams get bigger and bigger, um, the more and more of your energy actually that goes to those things, to help the team succeed, because that's ultimately how the company succeeds. So, um, not sure if I answered your question directly
yeah.
there, but I
No,
think
you
that's,
did.
you know, you do everything you can to prepare yourself, and it's probably going to take you a couple of times before you're able to make that jump.
Yeah, for sure. I think that, I mean, I know that makes a ton of sense. Like it's an interesting catch 22 because a
Yeah.
lot of the time companies want to hire somebody that's had direct reports on the dotted line, but everybody needs to start somewhere. And unless if you're getting promoted, then you have to take that leap somewhere.
Mhm.
So it's an industry dynamic, and I think it's been a bit more relevant in some of the roles that I've come across lately, which is why I thought I should mention that. But cool. I mean, I know that we kind of deviated a little bit from our initial topic of security budgets, but I think we covered that all quite nicely. We talked about like automation of different security tooling, headcount, personnel, certifications, or the lack of certifications, and then kind of moved into leadership. But yeah, like this was really good. Again, just thinking about the audience and people that are going to be listening to this. It's going to be extremely relevant. These are all things that are being talked about within the industry right now. So Certainly, I appreciate you taking the time to hop on in what I know for a fact is a busy time of the year for you. So, yeah, appreciate it a million, Doug. Anything else on your end before we part ways for the episode?
No, I think I'm good. And again, glad my son only jumped in the room but didn't jump on camera, so that was lucky. But no, appreciate Jason you know kind of working through this and getting the time for us to meet, and you know, just for the folks who have the opportunity to listen. Again, maybe as long as you're not salespeople, would be happy to connect with you on LinkedIn, and you know, hopefully this helped a little bit.
Absolutely. Well, yeah, I'm sure we'll be speaking soon. And until then, I'll leave you to it.
All right, thank you.